gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I am your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 154. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Because I keep saying it every episode, but you guys aren't doing it. Down in the comments section, let me know your thoughts. What is worse? The NFL scheduling or the Draftkings pricing algorithm? Because it seems like neither one of them have a lot of oversight. It just seems like Draftkings completely forgets about things from time to time, and whatever the algorithm spits out, they just go with it and nobody even overlooks it, because we'll see that the Dolphins are definitely way underpriced for the return of Tua this week. So we'll get to that game, but that's obviously just nobody looked at that. And then also the NFL scheduling. What are we doing here? We're in week 8. So obviously we've had bye weeks the past several weeks. We can't have bye weeks in week 8. We need 13 games, full slate. 2 bye weeks last week, probably 6 in some of the upcoming weeks. 6 teams on bye, totally makes sense. No bye weeks this week. So is what it is. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Pretty weird. But this week we are diving into week 8. Going to go through the Sunday slate, as I already said. Full slate, 13 games. So we got a lot to get to. Might as well just get right into it. From a DraftKings standpoint, it has been pretty good for me the past couple weeks. Just missing over the last 3 weeks. I mean, a couple weeks ago I had the Burrow stacks, was all over that, and then just went heavy on the Niners, and Mason and Debo let me down. So just missed there. Then the previous week, absolutely smashed everything, and then just played way too much Dak. Obviously, he fell on his face, so that didn't work out. Last week was in the top 50 in 2 different lineups going into the 4 p.m. games, and had way too much Dalton and Jaden Daniels. So not really working out, but I think we can turn it around. You know, maybe if I fire my coach, that might help, but maybe not. So maybe I can trade for a stud wide receiver that I used to play with, but that doesn't work out. I think we definitely have to run the ball a little better. That might not work as well. So I don't know. Regardless, I'm just going to try and play with a lot less anger and just enjoy the game more. Anyways, we'll get to that. So we might as well dive into the slate. As I said, we got 13 games. So first game, Baltimore at Cleveland. 44.5 is the total here. 8.5 point favorites are Baltimore. Now, I do expect Baltimore to roll here, so I do think that you want some pieces of Baltimore. Obviously, if Derrick Henry is going to go overlooked, I love him, because it looked pretty good for people that faded him on Monday night at halftime, and then obviously he did Derrick Henry things and then broke off 80-yard runs. So we know he can get there at 8,100. I do think it keeps his ownership down a little bit, so I'd be fine going there. Lamar's obviously pretty expensive, most expensive on the slate at 8,000, but you can play him as well. I think you can play him naked, but it does look like Zay Flowers has not been practicing, so if he can't go, Rashad Bateman's only 4,300. I think he becomes an incredible play. You could probably play him maybe even in cash, but that brings down Lamar Stack's total salary significantly if you wanted to go with Bateman. Andrews looks like he's back, but he hasn't been priced up 4K. Obviously been scoring touchdowns again. Definitely looks a lot better. Likely is still more expensive than him. Maybe if Zay Flowers is out, Likely does get a little bit more involved, so maybe he's a sneaky large field play. But there are some things that you definitely like on this Baltimore side. And then we have Jameis Winston on Cleveland. I know people have been clamoring for him to play over Deshaun, so finally gets his chance. 5,200, good price. But if he gets any sort of ownership, I don't think I'm going to go there at all. It's just everybody has the Jameis in their mind of literally one season. He hasn't looked good in the rest of his career. It's one season where he had Godwin at his peak and Mike Evans at his peak. So is he an upgrade over Deshaun Watson? Absolutely. I think I would be an upgrade over Watson at this point. So you can definitely say that. The fact that they are huge underdogs at home to a pretty weak pass defense, you can definitely make cases for it. But I'd probably rather just play some of the pass catchers on their own and use them maybe as bringbacks on Baltimore stacks, or if I wanted to go Henry and just bring it back with a cheap guy, that's probably the way I'm attacking it. Like I said, especially if Winston is getting ownership, and with how everybody is just excited for him, I would expect that he will. But I'm seeing Elijah Moore get talked up quite a bit, 3,700, but people seem to forget that Elijah Moore is terrible at football, so I'm not going there. You can make a case for Judy. I mean, we don't know who Winston's going to target here, but I like Cedric Tillman the best, 3,300. I think he might actually be the most talented of them. Now, had a good game, 8 for 81 last week, so do like that. $3,300 is pretty cheap. So if you wanted to go with a Lamar stack to Bateman and Andrews and bring it back with a Tillman, I think that's actually a pretty cheap stack, and you could probably pay up for some guys in some other good situations here. So just something to consider there. He'd probably be my preferred wide receiver option. And then obviously David Njoku, 5,100, was priced up $1,000, but it's probably still not enough, because I think regardless of whether it's Winston or whoever the quarterback is, they are going to target him quite a bit. He is definitely a talented tight end. And in this tight end landscape, there's enough value on the slate that I think paying up 5,100 for a tight end isn't crazy. So I definitely think Njoku's in play, and Tillman would be my preferred. I'm not going to go to Nick Chubb yet. Jerome Ford might be out, but 6,100 for Chubb. Played about 35% of snaps last week. You would have to think that that increases going forward, but Baltimore is much better against the run than they are the pass. So I'd probably give it another week. I don't see him having an incredible game here and getting incredibly priced up going forward. So I think we can still get a low-owned Nick Chubb that's pretty cheap maybe in the next couple weeks here. So that might be what I target there, but that's all I'm looking at here. Next, we have Tennessee at Detroit. Now, this one I do have some interest in the Detroit side. They're laying 11 points at home, so definitely expect it to roll here. 45 is the total. Probably getting Mason Rudolph again at quarterback for Tennessee, so don't love that. Detroit is very good against the run. Don't love Tony Pollard here. I don't care that Hopkins is gone. Ridley has not been good, and with Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball, Ridley's a little banged up himself, 5,200, no thank you. You can make a case for Westbrook Akine. He's been scoring some touchdowns, but 3K min price, fine. But I think there's enough other value on the slate that there's really no reason to chase it. So I'm not going to play golf stacks because I just don't see Tennessee really pushing Detroit here. But I do like some of these pass catchers. Obviously, with Jameson Williams suspended, Amon-Ra should get a little bit of a bump here in target share, and he's already got a pretty good healthy target share at 29% on the year. He's played 45% of his snaps out of the slot, so he will get out of the way of L'Jarius Sneed quite a bit too. So I do like him. He's probably my preferred pay-up option at wide receiver this slate, especially in cash. So I do like Amon-Ra, 8,400. Tim Patrick, 3,500. As I said, there's a lot of value on the slate, and I think he's definitely in play. Should see an increase in target share. If he gets popular, you can make a case for Khalif Raymond. Has some big play upside, 3,400. But I'd probably rather Raymond if I was playing a Goff stack, and as I said, I'm not going to do that. So I think that might be getting a little too cute. And Laporta's only 4,800. You would have to think at some point he's going to do something. And maybe the target share increases here with no Jameson Williams. So 4,800 for him, I think, is fine. And then these two running backs are always in play. 7,400 for Gibbs. I do think that there's some other pay-up options that I would like on the slate over him. But you drop down $1,000, 6,400 to Montgomery. Got a little banged up last week, but looks like he's fine. Doesn't even have a Q tag. He's practicing. So I think he would probably be the preferred guy that I would play in this backfield this week. I loved Gibbs last week. Obviously, he has the big play upside, but I think Montgomery has a little bit more touchdown upside in this one, especially as heavy favorites. They may end up going a little more run heavy here. So I do prefer Montgomery of the two there. Next, we have Indy at Houston. Now, this one I think could actually be a pretty good game. 46 is the total. So definitely expect some points in a dome. These teams tend to put up points against each other. Houston laying 5 points at home. So I don't know. I might actually take a chance on Anthony Richardson this week. 5,800 is not a bad price for him. I know as a passer, he doesn't look good at all, but this Houston defense isn't great. They can get some pressure, but I think he can complete some bombs here if you wanted to pair him with an Alec Pierce, but Alec Pierce is 5K, so it's he's not going to get a ton of targets. But Pittman and Downs are both banged up. They've been playing through their injuries, but I don't think I want to play either of them. I'd probably just play Richardson by himself. Now, Jonathan Taylor returned to practice this week, limited, but got to keep an eye on him. He could be back in this one, 7,500. I don't think anybody would play him, so he would be interesting. But I think if you wanted to just go Richardson naked here and hope that he can get something done on the ground and maybe connect on a long bomb at only 5,800, I think he could pay that off. I'm not crazy about Stroud stack 6,900, but I'm fine playing either Diggs 7,500 or Tank Dell 6,300. I don't think that they get incredibly popular at their price points, and Dell really hasn't looked good this year, but I do still think that he's going to have a blow up game here or there. So he'd probably be my preferred with a $1,200 savings, but for that reason, a lot of people probably would rather go to Dell. The Dell truthers probably go there rather than Diggs. So I think they are both definitely in play. And then I've been fading Mixon. I think I've only played him once this year and was heavily underweight on him. Actually, it was last week. I only had him, I think, in maybe 3 lineups. And 7,700, it just seems like most of the touchdowns are going to go through him. He is getting an elite workload. So I think it's very hard to get away from him here. I'm interested to see if people go to him this week. I think with his workload and no one really pushing for any touches here, he definitely makes sense. And Indy is terrible against the run. So I love Mixon, probably Diggs and Dell for me. And one of those guys would probably be my bring back on a Richardson stack. But I do think that you might want some pieces of this game. And I don't see it getting too popular. So if you're playing an early only slate, there are a bunch of games in the 1 o'clock slot here. So if you want to go early only and maybe target that stack that I just said, that could get you a little bit different here. Next, we have Green Bay at Jacksonville. Green Bay is favored on the road, 3.5 points. 49.5 is the total here. Seems a little bit high. I mean, Jacksonville's defense is terrible. Green Bay's defense hasn't looked great. They've been giving up points, but I don't know. I don't know if I see that many points in this one. Obviously, Love has looked good, throwing multiple touchdowns pretty much every week. 7,100 for him, I think is fine. The issue is who do you pair him with? Because there's just too many guys. Watson's banged up. Reed is banged up. But if all 4 of these guys are going with Reed, Dobbs, Watson, Wicks, they're all over $5,000. None of them are cheap. You'd have to allocate way too many lineups to it. So you want to target this Jacksonville passing defense, but I might even just try and go with a Love, maybe Kraft. Kraft has been good. I mean, he's not getting a ton of targets and really hasn't had more than 4 receptions, but he is turning them into touchdowns in production. So I think that would be okay. And then hope that, if Love throws 3 touchdowns, 2 of them aren't to one of these wide receivers. Maybe he spreads it around a little bit. But I do think that you can get away with just playing Love and just getting all the passing volume and passing scoring of this game through him. Jacobs isn't a bad play. Jacksonville's terrible, just period on defense. They're definitely worse against the pass, but I'm probably not going to Jacobs this week. But you can definitely make a case for it. So I'd probably honestly play Love by himself. And I know playing quarterbacks naked that don't run is kind of weird, but I think you can make a case for it because I don't think you can say confidently that any one of these 4 is just, that's the guy. You would say Reed, but with him being a little bit banged up, maybe it lowers the case. He is 6,700. It's not a terrible price for him, but I don't know. It would probably be him or Kraft with Love, and I might just play Love by himself. Bring it back with a Brian Thomas Jr. 6,400 is probably too cheap for what he is at this point. It's just he's got over a 20% target share in this offense, and the guy has tremendous upside on just limited catches. Ingram's banged up, 5K for him. I think I'd rather just pay the extra $100 for Njoku. Now, if ATN still can't go, Bigsby is actually more expensive than him now, 6,300. You can make a case for it. The guy has been extremely explosive, but I'd probably consider it in larger field. I don't think anybody's going to play him. So if you wanted to go Jordan Love stack and bring it back with a Bigsby instead of a Brian Thomas, I think that could make some sense. But it would probably just be Love and Thomas are my preferred here. But you can definitely make the case for Bigsby. Next, we have Arizona at Miami. As I said at the top, just DraftKings pricing just said, nah, who cares about Tua? 45.5 is the total here. Arizona coming off of a short week on Monday to Miami. Miami laying 3.5 points with Tua back. So obviously you can make a case for Tua stacks. Tyreek is too cheap at only 7K. Waddle's only 5,400. Waddle is banged up. What else is new? But it's still early in the week, so he could be okay. I do think that most likely people go to Tyreek, and Achane is still too cheap, 6,200. So I think Waddle goes a little bit overlooked there. Now, obviously, you prefer to play Tyreek, and at only 7K, he's definitely a great play. So going to have him in some lineups, but I don't know how much leverage Waddle will be, but definitely keep an eye on the ownership there and the injury report. Your exposure to this game could honestly be Achane and Tyreek Hill, and then just be on your way. If Achane gets out of control, Mostert seems to be healthy. I could see him potentially scoring some touchdowns in this game at 5,900, but Achane should probably be the preferred play. But I think in larger field, you can make a case that Mostert could be a good leverage play. I mean, we could definitely see a game here where he scores 2 touchdowns. I think he's still going to be used enough and used on the goal line where you can definitely make a case for it. Kyler Murray's 6,400, I think, is in play. Just obviously we see him score a 40-yard touchdown almost every week, so why not? Now it's hard to know who to pair him with because apparently Marvin Harrison Jr. sucks. Kind of weird. And then you can't really trust Wilson or Dortch. Zay Jones is in the fold now, so I don't think this passing attack is great. McBride is probably okay, but 5,500, I don't know if you want to pay up all the way for that. I don't know if the upside is there, so maybe a Kyler by himself, bring it back with an Achane and Tyreek or a Waddle could make some sense. But I love James Conner here, 6,500. He's the guy for this offense. Involved in the passing game, so if they do get down, he's still going to be in there. The Miami defense cannot defend the run. Now, part of that is just teams have been running on them so much because they know with no quarterback that they can't really put up a lot of points. But I love Conner here. I think he should have a great game against this defense. So if you wanted to go to a stacks and bring it back with a Conner, I think that would probably be the preferred way. But I think you can definitely make the case here, too, that even if you did want to just stack up the Miami side, you didn't necessarily need to bring back. So that's what we're looking at in that one. Next, we have the Jets at New England. Now, this one, not a ton of interest here. Very low total. 41 is the total. Jets are laying 7 points on the road. Breece Hall's definitely the play. He is too cheap. Just another guy. I don't know what the pricing algorithm is doing with him. 7,300. Since Saleh has been fired, he has been a workhorse again. Braylon Allen basically has been an afterthought. Last week, 82% of snaps for Breece. Allen had 9%. Over the last 2 weeks, Breece has 11 receptions on 15 targets. So love what he's doing. New England, second most rushing yards over the last 4 weeks allowed. So great matchup for him. Great price. Should be a lock in cash and probably will be my highest owned running back on this slate. Now, he probably will garner some ownership because of this price, because of the matchup. So I think this might be a week where you can play Devontae Adams, 7,100. We saw him still get the targets, first week there, hadn't played in a couple weeks, so maybe a little bit rusty, obviously on a new team. So wasn't the best situation last week. I don't think that this New England defense is anything to be afraid of. He's still going to get the targets. 7,100, I think he goes overlooked, and at $200 less than Breece, it's a price point pivot. I think it could actually make a good amount of sense as leverage here, and he could absolutely blow up and break this slate at a very low ownership. As far as the New England side goes, I want nothing to do with anyone other than maybe Hunter Henry. 3,800, I think, is a good price for him in a terrible tight end landscape. He's been what looks like to be the preferred target of Drake May to this point. So I think you can make a case for him. Next, we have Atlanta at Tampa Bay. Obviously, Tampa Bay reeling with these injuries, not great. I mean, it's going to allow for some serious value, though, on the Tampa Bay side. But Atlanta laying 2.5 points on the road, I'm kind of thinking about betting Atlanta. I do still think Tampa Bay will have some semblance of an offense, but 46 is the total here. I don't think that Tampa's going to be able to keep up with Atlanta. I just their defense has not looked great, other than basically rushing the passer here and there. They aren't as good against the run as they were last year. So I like the Atlanta side here if I was going to bet this game. But as I said, there is a ton of value on Tampa here. Baker is 6,700, so he's expensive, but you can pair him with Cade Otton, who, I mean, honestly, you can make a case just play Otton in 100% of your lineups. 3,500, way too cheap. Obviously, playing on Monday night, they didn't get a chance to price him up. We saw him go over 100 yards. He could have 10 catches in this game. So I think at the tight end landscape at only 3,500 for how involved he's going to be definitely makes a ton of sense there, and he should be extremely chalky this week. So you could pair Baker with him, then Jalen McMillan probably gets some ownership here, 3,700, probably has the most upside of these guys. They did give him a reverse last week, so trying to get the ball in his hands even before Evans and Godwin are out, I think it makes some sense where he could have the most upside there. But if he does get chalky, Trey Palmer, 3,500, could actually be a sneaky play. I think he has a little bit of upside. And then Sterling will probably man the slot. I think he has some rapport with Baker. 3,800 isn't a terrible price for him. He'd probably be more cash consideration than tournament for me, though. But as I said, you want to stack up the side. It is very cheap, and then you can basically do whatever you want on the slate. As far as the Falcons side goes, not probably stacking up Cousins, but Bijan's been incredibly productive lately, living up to the price tag of 7,200. I think might even be a little bit too cheap for him. Algiers still involved, but Bijan's, got a chance at 100 yards, getting involved in the passing game, scoring touchdowns, so definitely love that. Drake London has been an absolute beast. 7,200, it might even be a little bit too cheap for him. Third in targets and receptions this year. 12 for 154 and a touchdown against this Tampa Bay secondary a couple weeks ago. So definitely love him. I think he's a cash consideration as well. If he gets chalky, maybe you can go to Mooney, 5,800. I don't love the price, but he has kind of really taken a backseat to London over the past couple weeks. But we saw him play pretty well against this Tampa team a couple weeks ago. And if London is uber chalk, I think that's some leverage there. And you can make a case for Pitts, 4,400, not a terrible price. He's been playing a lot more involved, and actually looked pretty productive. There's definitely a lot of good tight end plays on this slate, though. So I don't think I really want to go there. But that's pretty much what we're looking at here. Probably London and Bijan for me. Maybe one of the wide receivers or Otton. I think they're cheap enough where you don't need them to go off. You can make a case that you can play one of the wide receivers and Otton and not have to play Baker, because, as I said, at their prices, they don't have to absolutely score 20 points each. So you can make a case for that, but that might be more of a cash consideration. And then another thing to consider, Bucky Irving is not practicing. So if he can't go, I love Rachaad White. And I don't think those words have ever come out of my mouth, because I don't like Rachaad White at all. But at 5,700, if there's no Bucky Irving, we could see him. I mean, even if Irving is in, I still think White gets a huge target share here. I actually am waiting for reception props to come out, I might bet his over receptions because I think we could see a lot of checkdowns to him and him used a lot more in the passing game. And then if Irving is out, I mean, he should get a lot more goal line work. And obviously Tucker will be involved as well. But I think White should get much more opportunities than what he's been seeing here recently, which that was basically the only reason he was a play last year is just the amount of opportunities he got. So I do think you definitely want to keep an eye on Irving's status and consider Rachaad White, especially in cash, but probably a good GPP play as well. Next, we have Philly at Cincy. This game is kind of difficult for me. I keep going back and forth. Philly's offense just has not looked good. Hurts kind of got there last week, but even scoring touchdowns on the ground, he's only had, what, like 22 points? Now, I mean, that was incredible on the quarterback slate last week, but I don't know. I keep going back and forth. Now, Cincy's defense is terrible. Philly's defense hasn't really scared you, so you can definitely make a case to play these guys, but they're pretty expensive. So it gets really, really expensive fast. I don't think I want to play Burrow stacks. Hurts is 7,500. If you want to pair him with A.J. Brown's 8,200. Devontae Smith has taken a backseat to A.J. Brown, but we know he's still going to have his game. So 6,600 isn't terrible for him. If Goddard can't go, I think you can make a case to go back to Calcaterra. I know he wasn't good at all last week, really wasn't targeted at all, but the passing game for this Philly offense was not good at all. So since he can put up some points on them, I think it'll force Philly to throw a little bit more. So maybe that brings these wide receivers into play. Barkley, 8,300. Obviously, we saw what he did to the Giants last week, and Cincy is probably a worse defense. So 8,300, I think, for him makes sense. At that price, I don't see a lot of people paying up for him, so he would probably be the preferred option. As I said, I don't want to play Burrow stacks. Jamar Chase, 8,500, is extremely expensive, but we know that he can break any slate, so I think that's fine. But I probably see a lot more people going to T. Higgins, 6,500. He's actually out-targeted Chase to this point, so I think the $2,000 savings is a bit egregious, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree. So he's probably the most owned in this game, but I do think that you could definitely make a case for either of those two if you can afford it. As I said, there's a lot of value on the slate, so definitely make a case that you can go to those guys. If you are playing early only, maybe this is the game that you really do want to stack up and then find the value elsewhere. So those guys are all in play, but as I said, you definitely want to pick and choose what value plays you're going to play with them because it does get expensive quickly. Next, we have, heading into the later slate, 5 games here. We have New Orleans at the Chargers. Not a ton that I really like here. New Orleans, they're broken. I mean, Olave might come back. Kamara apparently has been dealing with broken ribs and a broken hand, but still has been involved and used. But just, I don't want anything to do with anything on that side. 40.5 is the total there, so not great. 7-point favorites at home are the Chargers. Seems like a bit much. As I just said, though, New Orleans is pretty banged up and pretty terrible. So I actually put together a money line parlay, and I don't trust the Chargers laying 7 points, but if you wanted to maybe tease them down to a point or put them on a money line parlay, I think that makes a lot more sense. And I'll just say that now. The money line parlay that I did was I like Green Bay against Jacksonville. Jacksonville was terrible coming back from London, 2 weeks in London. I know they're at home, but I just think Green Bay is a far better team. So I have their money line, Chargers money line, and then I went with Denver over Carolina money line, and then Kansas City over Vegas. So that gets you 2-1 basically on your money on DraftKings. So if you were looking to get 2-1 on your money, I think those 4 teams have a pretty good chance of just outright winning the game. You don't have to worry about any points whatsoever. So there you go. There's my free bet for this one. But back to this game. Don't want anything on the New Orleans side. If I'm playing any Chargers, it's probably Dobbins, 6,900. He was pretty popular on the Monday slate. So I could see him maybe going overlooked a little bit. 6,900 though, I think is a good price for him. He should get a ton of work against this New Orleans defense, who has been absolutely terrible against the run. I'm not chasing anything on the passing side. Will Dissly, 3K, with how involved he was Monday night. He's a little banged up though, but I think you can make a case there. But as I said, a lot of good tight end plays this week. So I don't think I'm going to get there, but you can make a case for it. And then the Chargers defense is definitely in play here also. Just New Orleans has not looked good offensively with Rattler. So that's all we're looking at there. Buffalo at Seattle. This one could be interesting because I don't see it getting a lot of popularity. But Buffalo laying 3 points. The total is pretty healthy, 47. I really like Amari Cooper here. 25% target share on only 34% route participation last week. I mean, in his first week, having that big of a target share, he's only 6K. So I could see that price going up here soon. I think he's going to be involved. Another week of learning the system. And, Curtis Samuel's banged up. Matt Collins is banged up. So we could just see Cooper, Shakir, Coleman. It could be a condensed target share. And obviously Kincaid and Knox are banged up themselves. So I love Cooper here. I don't think a lot of people are going to play Allen at 7,800. He's looked really good the past couple weeks. So I think that's a stack that comes into play here that's probably pretty low owned. Same thing, Cook is 7,000, so basically same price he was last week. Didn't really get there, scored a touchdown, but he's still involved enough in this offense. I think most people probably go to Bijan or to Brees, so he could be some leverage on this slate. I think there's some plays on this Buffalo side that you can go to that make some sense. I don't really want to play Geno Stacks 5,900. Kenneth Walker still dealing with that illness, which is kind of crazy. Obviously popped up with it on Saturday, was able to play through it. Didn't play his full allotment of snaps, though, so he was definitely dealing with something. But then the fact that he just all of a sudden popped back up with it again on Wednesday, obviously still dealing with something. I mean, obviously we saw Debo end up in the freaking hospital with pneumonia. So hoping that's not the case. He has a couple more days to maybe get over it before Sunday, so hopefully he's fine, 7,800. But people seeing that Q tag maybe keeps his ownership down a little bit, 7,800. If you can't go, Charbonnet 5,400 obviously becomes a great play. So definitely can play him. DK Metcalf, not practicing. They're going to see what's going on with his knee on Friday. As of now, I'm going to say he's probably not playing. So JSN, they priced up a little bit, 6,100. Lockett, 5,600. But you can definitely make a case to play the both of them. Obviously, if Metcalf is out. So I would probably prefer Lockett, I would say, because I think most people will go to JSN, believing he has a little more upside. But he's actually been playing a little bit more out of the slot. So I think Lockett would kind of play that DK role a little bit more. Probably has a little bit more chance of an upside touchdown. But I think both are definitely in play. And then Noah Fant's only 3,700. So no DK. Those are the three that you want. They're going to get targeted in this. And we have a pretty healthy game total. So you can make a case. You go Cooper and Josh Allen, bring it back with a JSN or a Lockett. So I do like that quite a bit. Or if you wanted to just skinny stack it, you could make a case for Walker and bring it back with a Cooper. I think that's fine. Or one of those wide receivers and a Cooper, or even just a fan and a Cooper. But Cooper is definitely my favorite play on the Buffalo side. I might sprinkle in some James Cook. As I said, I think he could be huge leverage. So there's some sneaky ways to play this game. And I think it could actually pay off this week. Next, we have Kansas City at Vegas. This one, again, not really crazy about it. 9.5 Chiefs are laying. Vegas is not good, but 41.5 is the total here, so not a lot of points expected. I worry about KC covering huge spreads, even though it is against Vegas. It is in division, so don't really love that. As I said, that's why I put them on the money line parlay. I definitely think they have a good chance of winning the game. I don't know about covering on almost 10-point spread, but don't really love Mahomes, 6,800. Yeah, they got D-Hop. He's probably not going to be really all that involved this week, so don't love him. Worthy 6,200, little too expensive. Has some big play upside. So in large field stuff, if you wanted to go there, I think it's fine. Kelsey is 6K and just hasn't looked like Kelsey. Maybe, I mean, you would expect at some point he's going to have a Kelsey game, but I really just don't like a lot in this game. I think he has the touchdown upside, but I'd probably prefer Kareem Hunt. He's banged up with a hip injury, so definitely got to keep an eye on that. But if he's healthy, I think if he can return to a full practice probably on Friday, 6,300 I think is a great price for him. Going to be involved, obviously. They want to rely on him. I think he has tremendous touchdown upside, as we've seen. So he would be my preferred play there. And then I'm not playing anybody on this Vegas side. Bowers all the way up at 6,100. You can't say that it's a bad price for him, but I just don't want to pay 6,100 for my tight end, really. If I was going to do that, I'd probably rather just play 6K for Kelsey. And I know that Bowers has been a lot more productive than him, but if I'm just considering who's going to break a slate at the tight end position, I probably still lean Kelsey. Maybe that's not correct, but that's just my feelings at the moment. So I'm not chasing anybody on this Vegas side. It would probably just be maybe a Kelsey for me, maybe a Worthy in some large field stuff, and Kareem Hunt. Next, we have Chicago at Washington. Looks like Jaden Daniels probably going to miss this one, so not great for the Washington side. Chicago, 3-point favorites on the road, 43.5 is the total. Caleb looks pretty good. I think I'm actually considering him in cash. He's thrown multiple touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. Has been running the ball the last couple of weeks, 34 and 56 rushing yards, so nice little floor there. Washington's defense, if you look at them over the last 4 weeks, they look like they've improved pretty significantly. But that'll happen when you play Deshaun Watson and Andy Dalton. I think they combined for like 218 yards passing in those 2 games. So that's going to skew the numbers a little bit. But I like Caleb here. I don't know who you necessarily want to pair him with. It would probably be DJ Moore, 6,600. Not a terrible price for him. Probably has the most upside. But you can make a case for Allen or Odunze. But most likely for me, it would be Caleb just by himself in cash. Or if I was going to stack it up, it would be DJ Moore or maybe a Cole Kmet at 4,700. And then for the Washington side, with Mariota playing, 5,300 for Mariota. He runs, so maybe you can make a case for it, but that's probably getting a little bit too cute. Brian Robinson, 6,400, has some touchdown upside, but without Daniels, how efficient is this offense? Because I think this Bears defense is pretty good. So I really don't like much on the Washington side here. It would probably just be a Caleb to most likely a DJ Moore for me, and then I'm on my way. You can make a case for DeAndre Swift, 6,200, but I just think there's far better plays on the slate at running back. At that price, it definitely could make some sense, but for me, it's probably just Caleb and DJ Moore in this one. Last game on the slate, this one just looks incredible. We have Carolina at Denver, 41.5 is the total. Denver laying 9.5 points. How terrible is Carolina that Denver is laying 9.5 points? Tough scenes. Anyways, looks like Dalton's going to miss. Apparently he was in a car accident, messed up his thumb. So we're getting Bryce Young. Gross. Definitely want nothing to do with him. Surtain should be back. This Denver defense has looked incredible. If you wanted to pay up for them, I think it makes a ton of sense. Chuba Hubbard, no. Deontay Johnson with Bryce Young, no. Want nothing to do with any of them. People are playing Jameis. I honestly would probably rather pay up $400 for Bo Nix. He hasn't been incredible, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's running the ball quite a bit. So I think you can actually make a case for playing Bo Nix. I don't hate it. Now, I would probably prefer to pair him with Sutton. I know he wasn't really involved very much, but he put up a 0. But I think he could be on the trading block. They want to focus on these young wide receivers, and they may want to showcase him in this game. And against Carolina, let's be serious, they're going to be able to do whatever the hell they want. So if they want to focus on Sutton for this game and get something in return for him next week. I think that actually is a little bit narrative based, but in some larger field stuff, I really think it could pay off with Knicks to Sutton there at only 5,300. It's a pretty cheap stack. Again, in larger field stuff, if you wanted to take a chance with Troy Franklin 4,100, I think he has some big play upside. You can make a case for it. I think Javonte Williams will get played a bit. 6,000 obviously had one of the best games of his career last week, and against Carolina, he can follow that up definitely at only 6K. So there are some plays there on the Denver side, and obviously their defense is also in play. So 13 games on the slate, a lot of ways you can go here. So definitely want to keep an eye on the ownership. I think this is a week where there's going to be some good ownership plays. You know, obviously the Miami side is going to look good, but with this many games, you can make a case to fade ownership a lot in these bigger slates because there's so many more options. It's going to be so spread out where if that chalk doesn't absolutely dominate, it's probably going to fail. So definitely keep an eye on that this week. Look for spots with leverage and keep an eye on some of these ownerships. But that's going to do it for me for this week. As always, check out thehelmsports.com. Have all my bets up in the My Bets tab right before Saturday games for college, right before Sunday for NFL. My cash write-up will be over there and also on yardsperfantasy.com. Check out themadlabmma.com. Obviously, MadLab is killing the UFC. Got a great card coming up this weekend, so definitely want to check that out. He will have everything prepared for us over there for DFS and betting. And then all of my bets go into the Discord the second I make them. I got absolutely murdered on Sunday, one of the worst Sundays I've ever had, and then literally won all of it back Monday night. So was actually a Connor touchdown away from sweeping 6-0 on Monday night. That would have been awesome. Also had him in a 6-leg parlay that would have won me $770, but that's fine. It was a great week, but as I said, check out themadlabmma.com. Everything goes right into the Discord the second I make it, and then have my contrarian corner leverage plays every Sunday morning for you guys. So check that out. As always, thank you for listening. Greatly appreciated. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you have left a review, go ahead and leave another one. And comment. Let me know what's worse. Is it pricing algorithm? Is it the NFL scheduling? Both are pretty pathetic. But that's going to do it for me. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
just have fun out there.